search YouTube real quick for nigga moment and see if I'm allowed to title it that.
Ah. You probably need to use asterisks.
Nope. And GDA. Oh no! What? I think I'm live already.
You are.
I am.
Eating is now streaming live on YouTube.
I accidentally must hit the button. Oh well, we're live. Hi YouTube.
Hi YouTube. Mr.
All right.
Who's here?
I am ready when you are. Oh hey, look! It says the meeting's being live streamed when I click back on the Zoom window.
Yep, we're watching Boondocks, season 1, episode 4, Granddad's Fight.
Hey, there's a way to minimize Zoom, and I think it'll stay on top. If I go to View, Immersive Speaker. No, that's not it. Keep on top. There we go. Oh, it's not minimalized, but I don't want to minimalize anyway. I want to see me laugh too. All right, I'm already 7 seconds in, so you can just start whenever you're ready. 3, 2, 1, go. And
you know the 7 seconds in. All right, hang on.
It starts with the intro. So I loaded it.
I was at 0 seconds. Like that's, normally we started. I'm at 7 now. I just need a second to get to 7 seconds.
But now I have to count it down instead of comfortably letting you play it, and then.
I'm ready.
I'll remember that for the future, that you got a control issue with starting together.
I just like to know that we're talking about the same thing when we pause.
And we would if I was just making it easier for me to start it with you.
I'm ready.
Me too. Ready, 3, 2, 1, go.
What a good theme song. Was this an original written for this show?
No. This is a whole song, I think, by Def Poet.
Like, was it made for the show, or was it?
I looked it up and downloaded it before. I believe it was made way before this show. It was Ashuru. And oh, never mind. It was created. Well, I don't know. Let's see.
Watch where you walking, nigga. Hey, what you say, nigga?
Watch closely. You're about to experience a nigger moment. Webster defines the nigger moment as a moment when ignorance overwhelms the mind of an otherwise logical Negro man.
What did you say, bitch, nigga? Hey, squeeze it, nigga.
Causing him to act in an illogical, self-destructive manner, i.e., like a nigger. Nigger moments are unpredictable.
Hey, wait, man, wait. It's stupid. Hey, you right, dog. Look, let's put the guns away and go on about our business. Freeze.
All in their band. If they had their own category, nigger moments would be the third leading killer of black men behind pork chops and fiends. It's a fact. Now let's see how a nigger moment affects a white man.
Watch where you walking, bitch.
What did you... Wait a minute. I'm white.
Where you going? Don't you ignore me.
What?
Perfectly good moment to throw
On 3, 2, 1.
About the nigger moment.
Where are you going? This is a perfectly good moment to throw your life away. That is a that's a strongly written line right there.
Well, I think it's the line that I most resonate with of the episode, because I've been in that position so much. Like when I went to, okay, so, you don't know my racial history. And this will be great for YouTube. I might actually cut this out and save it for future. So I grew up in a suburbia, white privilege type upbringing. I was statistically in places that Black people normally weren't.
Was that your experience while you were there?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious. Keep going.
Growing up, I didn't understand it, but looking back at it, my dad was I think that's part of the reason my dad developed being quiet when there were other people in the room and listening more. I think that's how he got to those spaces and how I got to my spaces, you know, that I'm in now. But anyway, I grew up that way, which means I didn't have strong Black culture, community, family, or experiences growing up. Came to an all-white Christian college in 2006, and for the first year became racist against Black people. Went home at Christmas, even told my auntie I don't date Black women because they're more aggressive.
Okay.
Now, Christmas was actually the change of that. And me telling my auntie that was actually the change of that. That moment in my grandmother's kitchen, talking to my Black aunt about how I don't date Black women, was the start of the perspective shift of woke culture. We can call it woke culture, it's just us here. Or the people who are going to hate me and troll and give me more social media outreach. It took 2 years of research, I'm going to say, to understand myself in Black America and white America. Eric Baldwin said to be a Negro and conscious in America is to be angry all the time.
Good advice for being miserable.
For what?
It's good advice for being miserable.
Yeah, to be conscious. Higher intelligence comes with higher rates of depression and suicide. So it lines right up with science too.
Nah, higher intelligence with high rates of neuroticism that go unaddressed come with higher rates of depression and suicide. It's a lack of integration.
That is what my doctor said.
Now, your doctor,
Want to go to Google?
how a thing happens and that a thing happens is not that a thing has to happen.
Are we not trusting the medical science, or are we talking about?
I'm saying the medical science is guilty of not judging people, other than the chemicals that are in their body, because you can't judge a person for what they know and don't know without getting crucified. But I don't give a shit, and so I say, if you believe that being smarter means you're going to be sad, then you're stupid about what it means to be smart.
Well, that's a weird absolute. But we can always we'll probably get back to that.
So either I'm the stupid guy, or I'm a liar, or I found a way. So maybe I'm the.
You can't just be overconfident.
Well, we're not talking about confidence. We're talking about happiness.
Yeah, but you're talking about your perspective confidently. So I don't think you have to be any one of those things that you said. I think you could just be overconfident. You don't have to be stupid. Smart people make mistakes.
Overconfident compared to what?
Huh?
Overconfident compared to what?
Compared to thinking there's more about that you could know.
There's more about everything that we could know, unless we know everything about everything.
Yeah, but what you said has cut off a lot of things already. There's a lot of things that you can't know because of what you just said.
Like what?
Because they're wrong and you just think they're wrong, so you choose not to qualify them under the knowing category. Those are things that exist.
So if
wrong.
The conversation ends with smart people being depressed because they're smart.
I never said that or implied that. I said higher rates, kind of like white privilege.
That's boring to me. Like, yeah, but then what?
It was supposed to just be a point to skip over.
Oh,
it wasn't supposed to be. It was boring. It is boring.
Oh, why are you boring me on purpose, Tony?
I'm not. You took that boredom and tried to make it interesting instead of letting it combine with the other topic at hand, which was my journey of race through 2006 to now.
Yeah.
So IWU.
One of my hot buttons, if I'm thinking about it, is people who make excuses for not being happy. And that's not you, the person. Any sort of thing that points as a thing that people can say, well, it's because I'm smart. Because I'm so smart, I'm depressed. Look at how smart I am. The proof is how depressed I am. Well, can't do anything about that without being dumber. Guess I'll go. So it's not that the statistics are there. It's what is done with them that provokes a level of disgust sensitivity in me where I point at a thing and say, that's the thing that makes you miserable. It's not your intelligence. It's your conviction about what you think intelligence means for that
Well, see, a
individual.
big difference that I hear, a big
What's that?
difference that I hear from you a big difference that I hear from you specifically is that you're talking about the conscious part of that statement and not the Negro part.
I don't separate that, but if you want to tell me how it's separate, that's fine. For me, it's human.
Okay, well, let's take out the word conscious. To be a Negro in America is to be angry all the time.
I'm sorry that Negroes are so angry then. I'm glad I'm not Negro.
But does it consider that? But does
if I had to be angry all the time, I would want to be a Negro.
Does it contain the same manipulation of your attention? Does it make you feel the same way as with the word conscious in it? Because like I said, you didn't point at the word Negro.
So there's a
You've been
second.
focused on the word
So the
conscious
reason I
and
leave
smart
that
and
alone,
intelligent.
so the reason I leave that alone and not another is because I see the same problem with another layer of rationalization over it, and sometimes peeling away 2 layers of rationalization is more work than most conversations are worth. Like, you haven't even gotten to the point where your consciousness is human. You still think you have a Negro consciousness, which is separate from human consciousness. Well, I'm not going to fuck with that. Go ahead, keep thinking that. I'm just going to act like everybody's consciousness behaves like the same rules, and then see how the choices we make to diffuse themselves based on cultural decisions. That's fine. But the underlying structure for me doesn't change.
So going back to the original point, then when I said you might be overconfident in some of the other things, it could just be an unwillingness to see it differently than that, or an ability to see it differently.
Now that is true, and that is the result of trial and error on my part. I've explored all of the options, good and bad, and seen what the most miserable people and what the smartest people who believe these things are. And then after doing these experiments over time, collate down the optimal path, which is what I care about. So for me, it's less about what people choose, because out of 7 billion people, you'll find everybody who's chosen something, no matter how statistically unlikely. So that's another way of saying it's everybody's turn in the barrel if you look at all humans. So when I individualize that, which is what I think information is most useful for, is advancing an individual's understanding, the optimal path, which leads to the things I want and excludes the things I don't, meaning success without misery, safety without torture. That's kind of the choices that I fixate on. So yeah, that's why I won't change certain perspectives. I've seen why people think that perspective is good. I've also seen what people say doesn't happen when they believe that. And sometimes the cost that is not acknowledged is far greater than the benefit that I don't really see being as deep as the person saying it does. I know that's a vague way of saying it, but that's, without being overly specific, that's the best I could do. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I follow. So after 2006, 2 years of study, and then I understood enough to actually start a journey into race. Yeah, that's the way to put it. So after 2 years of study and trying, I was good enough to start a journey into race. So much so to where 2 years later, when I started going to bars and clubs at 21, I was very, very disappointed, shocked, and surprised that I was still as prejudiced as I was towards Black people. So 2010, I turned 21 and started go-go dancing in a club. And I realized I only wanted to talk to the white girls, or was willing to talk to the white girls. Now, that was the experience that started me studying into anti-racism and why it's not enough to just not be racist. You need to be actively anti-racist. Well, not you, but that's how I started preaching. Yeah. And then after 2 years of study after that, I considered myself woke. Because at that point I was able to understand. I was not only able to understand, but I was also able to articulate the argument as to why Black people couldn't be racist from that perspective, which lets me know now to have those conversations
against Black people. Did you ever get to the root of that, or did you just try to get farther from it?
So what?
I said, did you ever figure out what it was that caused you to be racist against Black people? Or was it just something that a collection of behaviors you tried to move farther away from?
Oh, of course. No,
What was the
that's easy.
unifying,
That's easy.
what was the
That
key for
that's
you?
that's easy. There's no key. Racism is a colorless, odorless poison pumped into us by
I'm not asking you whether you
mass
were
media.
poisoned or not. I'm
I think
asking
mass
you what
media
the poison felt like.
it doesn't have a feeling. It's colorless, odorless, and feelingless. It allows you to be ignorant of it and live in support of it without
But you were
knowing it.
conscious of your racism while it was occurring.
Yeah.
Now you are behaving differently. So
Yes.
what changed? There was a light bulb had to have. You don't just go from one to the other.
The
There's a
consciousness
causality.
of it. The
So you just
consciousness
paid
of it.
attention to it more and it went away.
Yeah. In order to change bias, I watched a video, a YouTube TED talk about biases, and it said it said the only way to change a bias is to expose yourself to it. So I started actively forcing myself uncomfortably. A lot of people think Tony will talk to any girl for any reason, no matter, forget it. Doesn't matter what it is. And actually, at IW in college in 2006, the thing that made me so racist was that I was the Black kid that had fun being the minstrel show. They called me token on the cheerleading team as a term of endearment, and I took it as one.
Yeah.
And I'm so ashamed of that. That allowed a lot of racism to spread from those white people who may take that term or take the image of a Black person that I gave them for that first semester and run with it, Oh, same reason why in our conversation I said, I'm glad you have the knowledge, but I don't know what you're going to do with it, so you can post it anonymously.
So
it's all true.
Between Ken and I, so that's the question then I'll ask, because it's a corollary. So between Ken and I in private conversation, I'll refer to Ken as Uncle Tom because Ken refers to himself as Uncle Tom. And I'll refer to myself and he refers to me as Cracker Jack, which is my nickname for a white person. And to us, if you read that from an external construct without knowing either of us, you would just say there's two racist people being racist and spreading racism. But because language exists to convey ideas and information,
I think you have to be looking for it. I think you have to be looking for it to draw that conclusion.
That's kind of curious. I was curious where that was because you said if your
intent, look at intent, remember?
Right. Like were the people calling you token being racist or were they your friends?
I don't know. I don't make that judgment.
So if you think that they were taking advantage, then yeah, you were spreading racism. If you loved everybody and got along with them, and well, maybe it's a little bit more nuanced than
I think you aim to judge. I think you aim to judge those conclusions and conversations. While I'm more focused on the points that I said or made, and that's it for me because there isn't really progress.
So what I'm trying to do is learn more things from what you've told me than you're telling me you learned from them. That's when I go off on tangents. I know more ways to learn things from a statement. And I'm asking for more of the details that I would need to flesh that out. Because
and so I'm giving them to you.
Right. So when you give me a big piece of information like that, usually there's like 7 or 8 microscopic little additions that could make a whole web. And those are the things I'll ask. And people are like, what the hell does that have to do with anything? And like, well, if you'd spend, and this is general frustration, not you, if you'd spend less time asking me why it matters and just answer the damn question because it's so easy, maybe you could see where I'm going. But usually it's, I don't want to let you go where you're going unless I know I'm going to be comfortable with it first. So it's this whole chicken and egg.
I don't have that problem.
You don't.
You did that on your birthday.
Correct. You don't have that problem anymore. I'm good.
Maybe next time you can let me know when I did.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I made you aware of it, and over time it got better.
Fair enough. So 2006, I studied for 2 years. 2021 with the club. And then what else racial happened?
It was after the dancing, after the clubs, you were forcing yourself to talk.
After the club, that something else happened. Oh, Dr. Umar. Dr. Umar got to me after my first son was born, and that helped my racism thing too, because he um Pan-Africanism, missional marriage, and economics and Black community. So when my son was 1 or 2, which was I guess 4 years ago, that was another racial awakening of some type, to where that's when I became an actual activist. All through college, all through my racial journey, I would talk online. Once I heard Dr. Umar Johnson, and after Tamir Rice got killed, that's when I would that's when I was ready to protest. That's when I formed the gun club.
I have a question, and it's a delicate question, but I think it's an important one.
I love delicate questions. Let's rip it open.
So how can you tell the difference between fixing racism and shifting it to another group and saying that it's not racism?
I thought,
I'm not asking if you
I
are.
don't know if anybody aims.
How do you make that navigation internally? Because I'm assuming if you were trying to not be racist, you would care about not being racist in every dimension. Or did that navigation question not really play a factor? You already knew you were off track.
Okay, this is important. I've got your delicate question.
Did you turn around and go back because you knew you were going the wrong way, or did you figure out where you were and then try to get to a central location? Because if you just went the opposite direction, for me, that's a thing that's equal and opposite, which produces, it's just a polarity thing where you might have a different perspective of what's going on, but the dynamic, it still exists. It just has a different target. So, like I said, it's a delicate question, but I think it's an important one.
I don't think it's a delicate question.
How do you know you're not being racist against? How did you know you weren't being trained to be racist against white people?
Because I think we think about racism differently.
Right. So that was
power
that,
dynamic, systematic oppression. You asked before about how did I know or something like that, and I talked. I was just getting into colorless, odorless poison and all of those systems and stuff. And so I don't think it's a delicate question. I don't think it's a problem at all. Why can't we do both? Oh wait, we already said why we can't do both. Okay, I think it's okay to do both because of the power dynamic.
I'm just saying that if it depends on your motivations for, I guess.
Did I answer the question though?
Sort of. So you have answered it, which is good. So I can repeat it a little bit. Because everything, as you've said before, comes down to motivation and intent. So it's not wise to assume that a person's motivation for addressing their own racism has anything to do with ending racism in general. They might not care. They might just wish to be less racist, subjectively speaking, or to be less racist within their own social circles. So what I'm saying is that if you separate yourself from the goal of ending racism as a whole, then you're free from any sort of accountability to direct your healing of your own internal racism towards a specific thing that will causally improve that. Like, that's not your goal. You can't. I think
it's way more likely that by having that goal, you ignore way more people than if you have the other one.
Tell me how.
Because if it's a power dynamic, then what you're doing is you're shifting power from.
Power dynamic? I don't think it is. I don't think
that's why I started going on. That's why I started talking about systematic oppression.
I think it's a
20 minutes ago
dynamic.
But I have statistics on it though, and that.
Sure, there's a lot of examples of power dynamics that exist.
But you said it's
power is a power dynamic.
If we look at the perspective of where options of where to live, generational wealth, voting rights, resumes that don't get looked at because they have Black sounding names.
Yes.
The doll experiment, picking the white doll over the Black doll, beauty standards in movies. Those are the power dynamics that I'm talking about.
Those sound like perspective dynamics to me.
Okay.
I mean, I think power and perspective are closely linked, but I think the difference between power and perspective is the same way money works. Money is not power, because if money was power, only powerful people would have money. The power behind money is where money comes from and how it moves. So you can look at money and say that money has all of these dynamics tied to it, and it does. but none of those things direct what gives money its power. You can only acquire some of it, and unless you understand the deeper nature of it, all you're doing is spending capital without knowing how to earn it. So that was kind of sort of a different way of phrasing my question is, how do you know you're not just spending racial capital that you've acquired, as opposed to understanding what powers racism in a way that would let you end it? Or a different way of saying that is, if you understand racism well enough, you should be able to say how
because
to
of all
end
of the
it.
books I've read.
So let me, like I said, a different way of saying that is, if you
I
understand
agree.
racism sufficiently to achieve your goal, then you should have a path to ending it. Or you could say, I don't
disagree
understand
with
how to
that.
end racism yet, which means there's more to understand about racism. I think that's a fair statement to make.
Yeah, isn't it always?
Well, you tell me. I made a
What
claim.
situation could that not be said in or about? I don't understand this, and that's why. Can't. I don't know is always an acceptable answer.
Correct. So the only time you would bring that up,
I have said
the only time you would bring
so.
that up if somebody was making assertions that sounded like they knew, and where those assertions had more certainty behind them than was perhaps warranted. So that's a double check. How much do you know about what you're talking about? Do you know more than me, which is likely because you've studied it? Do you know more than everybody? Not likely, because everybody put together knows a little bits here that would add up to more than you. Do you know everything there is to know about the subject? Well, that's God. But a slightly lesser standard is, do you know enough about the problem to deconstruct it and prevent it from reemerging? So those are different scales of education. So when I give your experience weight, I have to see how much weight scientifically transfers into reality from your perspective. If you tell me, yeah, Tom, I've got it figured out. Here's where racism happens. Here's where you can see it. Here's how it presents. If we change this, and this, racism goes away. Then I would say, okay, we'll go deeper and deeper. Or you could just say, well, we don't really have a solution for racism, but these things seem to matter and these things seem to help. So then I can say, well, Tony knows more about that stuff than I do, but he's not claiming to have an answer to racism. So fine. So that means that between Tony and the answer to racism, there are parts of Tony's knowledge that are unfilled, the same as mine. So that's my point, is why I ask those questions. Isn't to pin anybody down. It's to see how close your theory is to a resolution from your perspective. And then whatever that is, I'll judge it by that as though it's true and explore it. But I need to know what your expectation is of what you know before I say, well, that's good. That's not what I'm shooting for. Or if I take this plus this plus this, I might be able to go further in my own research because I think this plus this plus this gets me to a resolution. So that's kind of how I would be approaching that information. So
I haven't seen any civil rights leaders that I wouldn't support. I don't see any resolutions that I think are detrimental. So I support those from, our community leaders.
I think the exercise is necessary, and I think it's a part of evolution.
Which exercise?
The exercise of exploring racism through community leaders. So I think that's necessary because not everybody speaks at the same level. But when somebody speaks, you can say, I agree or disagree. So if you've got somebody who's organized this topic in the way that you have and explains it in a way that makes sense to somebody who can never put that argument together, but can clear as day say this argument's a good one, and I think it's true, that's the role of speakers in general when they're honest. So when I look at that structure, that to me seems like a human collaborative effort to explore a problem we haven't solved. And that is a map of our progress. It's not a map of our virtue. The solution might not look anything like our progress, but the progress is still necessary to figure out what does and doesn't work. The only time you really see that sort of scientific method fail is when people fall in love with the process so much that they defend the process more than the goal. And things that protect the process are put ahead of things that may advance the goal, which I will to my dying day say, if you're talking to me about racism, is to end it. So someone can say, well, my goal isn't to end racism. Great. Good job. Like, all right, I'm not going to try and make you do that. But I also can't say then that the information we give and receive is going to be viewed and valued equally because, well, we're trying different things in that hypothetical scenario. I think you've got a mindset that, at the very least, whether you think it's possible, probable, likely, you would like it to be likely. And if you saw something that you could recognize as progress, I don't think you'd ignore it. That's not the type of person you've shown me to be. Like, you see something that's useful, you pick it up. That's why people are our greatest asset. Is everybody sees value differently, but we can be made to see value in ways that cross over different perspectives if we try.
It's 10:05.
I'll give you the last word, Tony. I talked a lot today.
Well, I was gonna say, what was I gonna say? Maybe you shouldn't use the word ending racism, but maybe ending systemic oppression.
I don't know. That's that to me.
Because I don't think you can.
That turns racism into. And here's why I draw a hard line there. It turns racism into a euphemism. It protects
Let me ask
the concept of racism.
Let me ask this then.
Okay.
Can I get a yes or no?
I'll try.
Can you end world hate?
For how long?
A year?
You'd have to define world hate, but
I'll let you do it.
I don't think.
I'll let you do it in the way you can, because then I'll understand it.
If you could end world hate, you would destroy the human species.
So then what makes you think you can end world racism? Or are we not talking about world racism?
I would say if racism is defined as oppressing other people based on their skin color, we could change that, in my opinion. Could we change people oppressing other people? Probably not, because some people...
sounds like you should change your word to what I suggested then, and you should change it to systemic oppression.
We don't have the same definitions for systemic oppression.
We might not have the same definition for world hate. I let you define it.
Right.
But you used the word oppression just now.
So
I think you should use that word because it describes for the Tony translation machine.
What benefit do I have?
And I think the mass is more of what you want because you use that word.
What benefit do I have by changing the word racism out? I believe the racism is a more direct way of saying what I want to say. So why would I say it less directly? What's the advantage?
It's accurate. It's more accurate. Racism is too subjective. Some people think it's about power. Some people think it's about skin. Some people think it's about culture, heritage, politics, money.
Now you understand why I use that.
And you understand why I think you shouldn't.
No. So what I'm saying is the nature of why people misunderstand that word is what powers that word. So using anything that word.
So then maybe our discussion
source of power behind it from my perspective.
Then our discussion maybe should be, do we want to end racism or do we want to end systemic oppression?
So I would say
a lot more black people
different way of
board
so the way
part of it than the racist part of it, because that's the one that's killing us more.
The way I could meet you in the middle on that is, which types of racism would you like to attack?
I like that.
And if the answer isn't all of them, I would like to say why.
Because all of them won't produce the greatest result.
Some racism is okay.
No, some racism is worse than others.
Some racism is worth the effort to fix.
All racism is worth the effort to fix. Just don't have the effort to go around.
We fix all kinds of racism? That was my test. I was testing the limits of your statement.
And we should. We can't. Or I don't believe that we have the energy as one person to do.
So second question is, if I believe that's possible, and I'm working towards that, why would
we've done this question before.
The question is, why would I include you on my team when you said I don't think it's possible?
Because you think that I'm useful, or because I see how I could be
No,
useful.
absolutely not. The most important thing a person can give me is loyalty and attitude.
Most
I don't
important,
care how smart you are. If you disagree with me, and what I do
you
is
didn't say anything about my loyalty and
the
attitude,
full
though.
weight of your intellect to see me fail. So
That's a lie.
smarter people who don't agree with what you're doing will undermine you, consciously or underconsciously. Because they don't believe what you're doing is possible. Why would they act like it is? They're going to act like what they think is possible is likely.
Because they still want it to happen and they love me. I've done it. People
If
have
they
done it for
agree to
me.
give me, if you agreed to give me servitude without question because you consented to that towards my goal, then I would trust your word. But if you say I don't believe the goal is
Servitude without
possible, you wouldn't have a
question.
role in achieving my goal. There's too many billions of people who have more faith. Anyway, that's my position. I don't know. It looks like your internet.
And that's and maybe yeah. It's a little unstable, but maybe that's why maybe I can use more people than you. I'm at least willing to, but
Like it's why
talking like
will I
that.
use a person? Is it stability over time is the thing I measure when I invest in a person. But yeah, I don't
That's
believe
fine.
that all people are equally applicable in all situations because that would mean people would die off.
Me
unless-
neither, but I think me neither, but I think just because you don't think it's possible doesn't mean you won't help me with it. That's a big chunk of yeah. There are so many people who don't think the Peyoga universe is possible that support me.
Yeah,
That's
you wouldn't
crazy.
put any in one of those people in charge.
I thought like you, I could be successful.
Right,
Why
but you
not?
wouldn't put any of those people in charge of what Peyoga stands for.
Why not?
Okay, maybe you would. They say, Peyoga's not really about the people.
If they say it's about the money, I'd listen to them, and I'd listen to how much money we could make, and I'd make sure it stayed about the people.
Of your compassion and education for the next generation of what Peyoga means. So our literature says Peyoga is people are our greatest assets, but really,
wait, are they
people
helping
need
me
the
with
money.
something, or am I giving them something? Are they helping me with Peyoga, or am I giving them Peyoga? You just said they couldn't help you. They couldn't be on your team. You're
If
not
they're
talking
helping-
about somebody. You're not talking about
can
me
be-
giving somebody my team. You're
they
not
can
talking about me
use-
giving somebody the whole
No, I
project.
mean talking about putting someone to work to help you in a cooperative manner.
You just said, would I give them that high level, high structure, whatever position?
Would you put them in charge of that organization?
We've started from them helping me achieve it.
Yeah.
That's what you said.
So
Nate.
what
And that's
help
what
is
I
a
said.
spectrum. Help is a spectrum, right?
It sure is, and you just cut them all off.
No, are they taking in your groceries or are they helping you?
You just said you wouldn't let them do anything. If they don't think it's possible, you wouldn't let them try.
You didn't
wouldn't
ask
let
me
them
how
help.
many people I need.
You're right. I sure didn't. Why
I
is
don't
that
need
important?
I don't need that many people to grow what I'm growing. Because of the way it grows, it doesn't break down.
You're talking about your specific team. You're not talking about any project. You're just talking about yours.
Yeah.
Oh,
Correct.
okay.
So if I have a specific solution that I believe is possible, and I only need X amount of people to achieve that goal, none of the people who are helping me achieve that goal will be people who I don't think believe that what I can do is possible. Those are the people who just sit and those are the bench riders. Those are the half-assers.
We work differently. I like those half-assers and bench riders because usually I see one specific thing that I want from them, or I see a specific way that they want to help, and I'm sure that they're going to do that thing because they don't believe in the whole project. They're not gonna, screw up anything else or go anywhere else or do anything else. They want to help here.
Need to be isolated from the rest of the project.
No.
Well, otherwise,
doesn't flow that way.
The number one source of entropy, in my opinion, is people who don't give a fuck.
Well, then they wouldn't interact and give me the social media outreach.
Oh, of course. No, they might have so selfish reasons to get a benefit of your organization enough to play along because, hey, this is where all the happening creative people are. Or I can go meet some chicks. All I got to do is pretend to be interested in handing out flyers. When really, I got my Peyoga shirt on the front and I'm really just here to pick up chicks on the back. But those people might be popular with the women all of a sudden. And now those people, you know what I'm saying, is that then now you've got a subculture built on this one guy's big dick energy. And he's really taken Peyoga and made it his own private harem. all because he didn't really care about the message, but he cared about what the organization could do for him, which is where corruption comes from. So when I say intention matters, and belief in a goal matters, that's why, is because corruption doesn't happen when a person loves what they're working towards, not intentionally. But it sure as hell happens when someone else's goal isn't quite as important as whatever you're working on. That's my view of it, though, just from organizations in general, like from an employer-employee structural perspective. I don't know. That's all. I feel like I learned a lot about you today, Tony, when you told me your story from college.
Yeah, we missed the part of it though.
I'm sorry. I always have too many questions. It takes a long time to tell me a story because I want to know a lot.
Maybe I need to have it written down next time. Oh, maybe I will write it down next time.
I do absorb information
I'll try
faster
that.
in writing because then I can have a list of questions I generate.
Next time I'll try to do that story again. We'll be at the same part of Boondocks.
Yep, I'm at 208. I mean, at least we got past the introduction, and that's a good thing.
Almost past the introduction.
All right, man. Well, goodbye, YouTube. Thanks for watching two dudes talk about shit.
See you online.
I'm Tom
Peace.
Gumbercules, the Game Master, Master of Consciousness, and that's Tony.
I'm Tony. Good night.
Good night.